And we're back with day 37 of Survivor 46 and 46. Nick Wilson just won Survivor David vs. Goliath, and another season that, although has another very corny theme to it, I think that it actually works well for the first time since maybe Brains, Brawn, Beauty. But we're going to talk all about David vs. Goliath today. I'm joined once again by Lauren, making her second appearance this time.
You got number two.
And we're joined for the first time since 42 and 42. We're joined by Casey. Thank you both for coming on. It's been a rough last couple of days with the boring seasons I just had to watch. So it was a nice reprieve to watch David versus Goliath today. Just getting right into it, as always. Casey, what was your first experience watching this season? And has that opinion of this season changed in any type of way?
I don't really think it has. When I first watched this season, which of course I watched it live, I was in, we'll call it a transitional period in my life, which were also, I think it was like at the time, a year and a half from the pandemic at this point.
Basically, so, yeah.
Yeah, I was in a little bit of a transitional period, and TV's been a constant in my life. And this season swept me off my feet. I agree with the statement that you just made about the theme and everything like that. I loved the theme and how actually really well it worked. And rewatching it has been really fun. And even though I knew the outcome, still watching some of those episodes and seeing some of the blind sides still had an impact, which not every season does on a rewatch. So I think for the most part, yeah, my opinion hasn't really changed. I think this is easily a top 10 season for me. I just wish I could actually experience it for the first time.
The first time again. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. Lauren, I want to get to you because for me, and I feel like for a lot of people, when you talk about all newbie casts that everyone puts at the top of the top, it's usually this, Cagayan, and Pearl Islands. Why do you think that this season, I mean, it's not like that much time has passed, but it's enough time that people could have decided to turn on it like they do turn on other seasons. Why do you think this season has so far withstood the test of time? I think, 2018, 2019. What is it about this season that people are always putting it on a pedestal?
I mean, I think the characters in general, if we're talking specifics here, because even the people that I would say are your side characters still deliver in this season. They do just enough where when they are on the screen, it's awesome. They're great, but they're not going to highlight the season. I mean, everyone knows the specific ones that highlight it, but then the ones that can give in confessional little tidbits. Some of these people remind me of a Courtney Yates, for example. They can just deliver on that small bit of airtime that they get, and I think that's why this season is always going to stand the test of time, just because it gets just as good on a rewatch. It doesn't get worse. Some seasons you have it so high up and then you rewatch it and it goes down. This one always stays exactly the same.
And for me, using that, one of those examples is Palau for me, where the first time I watched Palau, it's like, yeah, this is great. The second time I watched it, I'm like, yeah, this is great. Every other time I've watched Palau since then, it's like, okay, yeah, once the whole oolong thing, which is at that point, it's just like, okay, yes, I know what's going to happen, so I don't really care anymore. And then the merge, or whatever they called it in Palau, it just kind of was just repetitive, and then it gets to the end, it's like, okay, yeah, Tom's winning, so I guess I can move on. Palau has consistently moved down my list, while David versus Goliath, the last time I did this, ended up in my second spot, and we'll talk about where it is now. And I do think it's because of the cast of characters, because this was one of the first times over the last 10 days that I wasn't completely bored with the pre-merge. The pre-merge was a lot of fun. Both swap and pre-swap were very because of the characters that last one episode, 2 episodes, whatever. And I feel like there are two big characters on the season that I want to talk about first, because I feel like everyone that I've ever shown this season to has hated the same 2 characters the first time, and then they'll watch it again, and it's like, I actually think I love them. I was the same way. The first time I watched this season, I was like, Natalie and Angelina, they annoy the shit out of me, and I never want. And every time I've watched it since then, I love both of them. I think they add so much to the cast and so much to the storylines, both beginning and end of the game. Casey, we're going to focus on Angelina for right now. What were your thoughts on Angelina as a character and as a game player?
So with Angelina, I'm actually a little surprised that you say that because I don't think I disliked any of the characters. I thought they were all great. They all brought their own stuff, and Angelina is one of them. Do I think she was necessarily the person that I want to root for? No, but she is a character, and I think she's a fun character, a character who is not always self-aware, who's a little ridiculous and brings those entertaining moments. I think if you were to ask a lot of people what's probably the most iconic moment from the entire fucking season, it is, Natalie, is there any chance I can get your jacket? Like, that's from the moment it happened, it was all over. And so for Angelina, I actually really like her, not as a player, but definitely as a character. But the thing is I also think that Angelina is, I don't think she's actually necessarily a bad game player. It's just a matter of, can she fix her implementation? Can she fix the way that she delivers things to make it more believable? Because it's very transparent. Another very memorable moment is the whole rice shit. It was very transparent. It was brought up 1,000 times. You even think about the loved ones visit. Mom, I got rice forever. Like, it's just, I think the idea is there. The mind is there. It's just, she needs to fix her delivery.
Lauren, were you a fan of Angelina the first time you watched this, or were you one of me and a lot of others where she grew on, or do you still just are not a fan?
I didn't dislike her, and I think that's my main thing with this cast in general. I didn't really dislike anyone. I know you grow to maybe hate a player, not hate, but you know what I mean? Just like, yeah, I'm not rooting for them. But the funny thing is, the season is not the same if she's not in that final three.
Absolutely.
That's what makes the season in general. No, she doesn't get any votes. That doesn't matter, though. It's the whole storyline leading up to getting to the final three. Them searching for the idol with the ladder. I mean, there's so many moments that she makes it the moment. If you run this season back, she is a part of so many specific parts of it where if it's someone else in that spot, I don't think it holds the way it does unless it's her, because it's just fitting. It's perfect. It's brilliant casting having her on the season. I actually truly would like to see her play again, because I think she's one of those people, maybe after watching herself, all right, let me still, and like you said, Casey, she's not a bad player. I think she had some right things there, but she didn't have the awareness of, maybe I shouldn't approach and or talk to people this way. But I think rewatching yourself, she's someone that could surprise people coming back and playing again.
Yeah, I think it's the execution. And I talked about Ghost Island yesterday, how the theme worked, or the theme as a whole is fine. The execution was shit. I won't say that Angelina's gameplay was shit, obviously, but I do feel like a lot of her ideas were in the right spot. It was just the execution of, hey, I am, and she has a confession where she says, yeah, I was definitely going to pander to Elizabeth on her way out. But she went about it in a weird way, and she got called out on a tribal, and she gets called out on a lot of stuff this season, and I don't feel like she's dragged to the end. She still sits at the end, even though people are getting annoyed with her and are trying to target her every now and then because she is the easy person to put out there. And all of a sudden, she is sitting at the end, and she does, even the Allison thing where she tries to embarrass her, basically, she plays it off relatively well when she has her 100-foot ladder, and in the moment she's able to improvise. I really enjoy Angelina, even going back to the merge where she's the first person that puts Christian's name out there and people don't want to listen to it, even though she has clocked that this man needs to go. And then, of course, Dan, in all of his infinite wisdom, decides, oh, no, like, Angelina's crazy. Her husband's in the military, so she doesn't know anything that's going on. If you want to talk about characters that I really still just don't vibe with, it'd probably just be Dan. I didn't really like Dan this time, or most times around, but he's fine. I don't hate him or anything. And then the other person being Natalie, as far as I feel like people's opinions kind of change with her. Natalie gives so many faces this season that I feel like I just give people on like during my daily life. Lauren, we'll start with you. Natalie. Hero
So-
or villain? Hero or villain? No.
Well, she's not a hero.
I know.
I don't think she's a villain either. That's the thing. I don't think she's either one.
Either, yes.
With Natalie though, she's a person that if they ever did another second chance this season, her name better be on that ballot. It has to be, because I mean, there's other people from the pre-merge I would like to see on a second chance this season. I would like to see Lyrsa play again, of course, because I think if you look at it, the group that she was with, they became the final three. And so she wasn't playing a bad game. She just happened to be on the wrong side of the boat where it came down to that. But she was in the mix. She was doing quite well. But going back to Natalie, I think that people will be excited to have her back. I mean, look at the bites you get in the confessionals, the exchange between her and Jeremy. It all hits. It's not a miss. It's a bullseye. That's why I said even the side characters, everyone delivers somehow, except, maybe Dan. I'm right there with you on Dan, but he's just there. But you have to have at least one just there person.
Yeah, and more, my thing with Dan Moore is just he comes off as very condescending towards certain folks, and it is very. I get very excited watching him get non-idled out, or he got nullified out. And we'll talk about those few tribal councils in a little bit. Casey, do you? I mean, she'll be, if they do a second chances. Let's say they do a second chances for 50. She'd be in her 60s, like early 60s at that point, because I think she was 57 here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, and I do feel like there are some older folks that, they would put like, do you feel like Natalie going into a second chances type ballot, do you feel like she would be able to gain a lot of traction, or do you feel like people might hold it against her with her age more? Do you feel like people would want her back? Absolutely.
I could see some people wanting her back. I don't. And I also don't think CBS would have her back, especially with the way
that edit in the reunion.
Yeah, that's an instant no-no. Like, whether you want to interpret CBS as petty or Jeff as petty or whatever, like the second you start doing, you're done. Like, there have been plenty of people that have had great relationships with Jeff and CBS. They did one thing out of line, and they'll block them on social media. They'll ignore them, and that right there was a little thing, but it was enough to be like, all right, now. But with her, no, I think there's a lot of other people I would like to see back, whether it be someone who's older or someone who has played the game more recently. I think Angelina would be once again a great person to have back, and I also think with Angelina's time between this season being David versus Goliath versus 50, it should give a player enough time to reflect on their game. Sometimes having people back really soon after benefits them, like a Russell type person. Granted, he still didn't win, but he still managed to get to the end again. But then you have other people like Michaela Bradshaw, who didn't have the chance to truly reflect on her game and therefore then played an even worse game her second time around.
You think?
I think so.
I think so too. Yeah, I agree with Casey.
Yeah, and it's not to say she's a bad player, because I was excited when I heard Michaela was coming back, but I think she ended up becoming self-conscious of her game, and so that's why she ends up, if I remember correctly, tagging along with Sari, and she's not really playing the game she could have played her first time around.
Yes, Will Wall got in her head, bastard. Please.
But yeah, but with Natalie though, I don't think she's going to show us anything different. I don't think I want to see the same thing in 50. I want to see something new. I want to see an evolved player, and I don't think Natalie's ever going to give that to us. And they even say stuff in the early episodes of the confessionals, like, she's 57 and this is how she's lived her life. She has a husband that loves her the way she is and a job where she can act this way. She's set in stone. We're not going to see anything different from her.
Yeah. And it sucks, but I think that when you look at all time great characters, especially in this era. I think Natalie, the fact that Natalie is pre-merge and is still looked at as one of the big characters of this era Survivor, I think is a testament probably to the edit as well. You know, I know that she sits on it during the reunion, but like, she's portrayed as more villainous, but she's so entertaining that I don't care. And those are the types of villains that I enjoy. The ones that are entertaining and not, you know, I don't like people that are just actual dicks. I don't like Russell Hantz. Everyone knows that at this point because I've said it so many times throughout this. I like people like Natalie. I like people like Abby Maria. As crazy as she was, like, I enjoyed watching her specifically the second time around. Angelina, you know, going back to Angelina for a second, and Lauren, you brought this up about Lyrsa being on this tribe where they got decimated to 3 right before the merge. Every time I watch this season, I always forget that it is those 3 come from the same swap tribe. Like, I know they're the final 3, but I always forget that when the swap happens, they end up together, and that is what eventually takes them off into to the end. And specifically, Mike and Nick having, you know, their alliance along with all of Nick's other alliances. And we're going to start talking about Nick Wilson, who I would say on a cast this large, with as many characters as we have here, I would say Nick is probably like the 8th best character, whatever that means. But I did enjoy his story arc. Nick is definitely not someone that I would have ever predicted would win the season, even as the season progresses. I'm never in my head like, oh, well, it's going to be Nick that does it. In my head, it was going to be someone like Davey. I think I always thought that Christian was going to get sniped earlier. I even felt like Mike White probably was going to do it. So when Nick did win, I was actually shocked. Lauren, thoughts on Nick Wilson, the player, and do you feel like in that final tribal that you would have given your vote to him or one of the other 2?
So this is why I do love Survivor so much, because there's so much luck involved with it, because I think about it. Nick probably goes first. If they're going to tribal and making a vote, Nick's out first. So what does Nick do? Adjusts gameplay, figures out, okay, I need to take a step back, rewind myself. I'm given another chance to be in this game. What do I have to do to move forward? Because I was rubbing people the wrong way. And what does he do from there? Doesn't rub people the wrong way and figures out a way to get himself to the end of the game. The story line in whole, his story could have ended at what, day 3? And it goes all the way to the end, because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And that's literally what he does with the season. Whether how I feel about him as a person outside of the show, it doesn't matter. I'm talking about the show. I think he deserved to win the game, because I think Mike at FTC didn't want it. That's really what it comes down for me. And how I would vote, I don't care how much money you have, but if you're gonna rein it in and not really give me much information on why you deserve to win, I'm not gonna vote for you, because I want someone there that's going to fight for the win. And I feel like Mike didn't do that. If Mike shows up to that FTC and fights for the win, I think the vote count goes 5 his way, 3 the other way. But you just don't know, because every jury's mindset is different when they're sitting there in the moment versus when they're sitting there after watching the season play out. But I still think if he goes in there and fights for it, I think he gets 2 more votes to get him the win. I really do.
Yeah, and like you brought up, you know, Pat going out when he does, just totally, even, and this is not hyperbole, but it kind of sucks the air out of the first episode. And thankfully it happens at the end of the episode. But episode 2 starts off with Christian basically telling Nick, like, yeah, you were screwed if we had, and he was like, yeah, I know, no one was talking to me. And yes, he does adjust. And I want to say, because every time I watch this season, I always in my head am convinced that Nick is lying about his mom when he tells the story, just because of the way that it's shown. So it's shown that Jessica has this moment at camp where she's talking about her home life and everyone's having this bonding experience. And then the scene cuts to at night or early morning, and Nick is basically waking everyone up to be like, oh yeah, now it's my turn. And he's telling this, and then it cuts to a confessional. It's like, oh man, yeah, he's not actually lying. It's just the way he was portrayed in episode 1. I just thought okay, this is going to be the guy that was going to be out here telling all these lies. When in reality, he really wasn't. So Casey, like I said, character wise, yeah, Nick is probably, as the kids say, mid. But what do you think? What was most compelling to you about Nick Wilson 1.0?
So I actually think Nick is a fine winner for this season. I think it hits really well on a number of beats, including the theme of the season when it's David versus Goliath, and you have two Goliaths at the end and one David. That one person wins it. I think that Nick does really well on the one-on-ones, which is why he manages to make a number of the alliances. And as corny as it seems, especially I remember when I was first watching it, thinking, "Oh God, he's really got to name every fucking alliance." There's power behind it. It adds a playfulness to something that's supposed to be very serious. And I think Nick does really well in that capacity. And it's funny you bring up the mom story, but it was giving me very much Spencer vibes during, I believe, Spencer's second season, when he like opens up to Jeremy about like him, trying to say that he loves his girlfriend, and it's like kind of cringy, but it's like very much like it's a truthful moment, so that's kind of what that reminds me of. But no, it's interesting, this time around, because I can't quite remember what I thought. Like, I think that in his mind, the entire day that was weighing on him, and it just happened to come out. So I can definitely see where you're coming from. But no, I think Nick is a solid winner, and I really like him. And game wise, I really like him, and I liked him then too. And I think I could see if Mike, took it a notch or two, potentially winning. But I don't know. I'm honestly not sure. But
Okay.
ultimately, I like Nick's win.
And I want to go, and I know that I'm going to be talking about the season in a couple of days, but when Winners of War first came out, and I saw that Nick Wilson was going to be on the cast, I would definitely put him in like the Ben category of, I really don't need another Nick Wilson showing. And very similar to Ben, he's portrayed as kind of a fool in Winners at War, as compared to his first time, where he is looked at as, he is on a lot of the votes, and he is looked at as, someone that is leading the charge for most of the season, especially when the merge becomes more fluid. For me, he wasn't the most compelling, and this was before anything else, but he was never the most compelling. But it doesn't have, like, compelling doesn't matter. What matters is what both of y'all have said, is how you perform at the end. And I think that he performed well. I don't think that people were going to vote for Angelina, even though I did think she'd perform pretty well at the end. I think it was because, like both of y'all have touched on, a lot of the stuff she did just came off as too much, whatever that means. It just came off as too much. It felt like she was trying too hard. If that can even be a thing in a game and Survivor, it felt like she was trying too hard. I also want to talk quickly, but I want to get to Mike White. Allison this season, she falls in this Alexis Jones category of someone who everyone that we are watching says they're a threat, that they're going to win, but that production and the edit for some reason just doesn't show us, because we are told time and time again, Allison's going to win if she gets to the end. Allison's going to win. We need to get rid of Allison because she's going to win. Same thing happened with Alexis and Micronesia. Same thing would happen with Chelsea and Ghost Island. For like, obviously as an audience, as we're watching the edited version of the show, I felt like Allison was doing pretty well. But why do you think? Because she wasn't a boring confessionalist. Why do you think they chose to not show us as much about what was going on with Allison, especially because she makes it to the final five, and especially because she is clocked as a threat? Either one can go.
Well, I think with Allison, it is a situation that Survivor, especially in the prior seasons, they sometimes have a hard time editing the players who are doing well at the game, but don't necessarily have anything physically to show for it. And I think with Allison, I think in her smaller moments does show why she could be a potential winner's threat. I think a couple standout moments is just looking at her challenges performances and her ability to do puzzles, how she is a very intelligent individual and strategic, but then also you have the smaller moments of her being very empathetic. And she also takes that comparison to her being a doctor or physician or whatever she officially is, and comforting Gabby, when they're in the swap tribes and Gabby's just like, I don't know where I fit in. I think it's the subtle moments. And once again, I think the editors have a hard time trying to build something big up if you're not a crazy character like Natalie or like Angelina or even like Christian, or you're not someone who's super buff and literally carrying your tribe in the ocean, obviously not being this season. But I think they just sometimes had trouble back then doing that. I think they're getting a little bit better in this new era, though.
Yeah, I do agree. But that was just my small Allison tangent. Mike White. So technically, we have two celebrities on this season with John and Mike White. I remember I recognized John first as a big pro wrestling fan, but obviously I also noticed Mike White. I just couldn't put my finger on where I knew him from. And thankfully, we get that out of the way pretty early. It's like, oh yeah, you might have seen me in School of Rock, and
Amazing Race too.
Amazing Race.
Yep.
Yeah. Mike White. I had Naomi on here for what did we just cover? Oh, we covered HHH, and the name of her podcast is Mike White Was Robbed. And she's done, and she's interviewed him, and I obviously I don't believe in robbed players and any of that, but I did feel like Mike played. And like you said, up until his final tribal, I felt like Mike was playing a great game. And Christian's voting confessional, where he says, I feel like everything you did in the game, blah, blah, blah. I hope that what you did in this game changes the game moving forward. And for someone, I think the second celebrity to ever sit at final tribal outside of Lisa, I do feel like Mike played very well this season. And he was in a where people once again might try to target him because he has money and this, that, and the other. He is still able to go past all of that and sit at the end. Thoughts on Mike White, the player, not including Final Tribal, just Mike White as the player, as the character this season.
I loved him. I thought he was hilarious. I mean, just going back to him chilling with the glass of wine, just eating it up. He was great. I remember watching him on Amazing Race when he did it with his father, and they were so likable. People loved them together. And then when I saw he was going to be on Survivor, I said, all right, how is this going to translate? Because me seeing Mike out in the woods, hold on. I don't know if this is going to go that great. I don't think he even went in there with super high expectations. And then when it was finally going well and he goes, all right, I'm having fun. The strategy's fun. I'm into the game now, and I want to play the game. Like I said, my biggest issue with him, I wanted him to finish the job at FTC, and I felt like he leaned back a little bit too much because he knows he has money. And it's kind of, I don't have money like Mike White. I wish I did, but I think you run into that situation where you're sitting with some people where they don't have as much as me, and it's a battle within yourself saying, I would love to win Survivor, but is this going to help this person a little bit more than it's going to help me? And I think a lot of jury members play with that and have that in the back of their head too. But for me, if I'm ever sitting on a jury, if I ever was on the show, I'm voting for who played the best game, who I thought played the best game. And I'm not factoring that in because that can't be a main motivation. It can be for some. And that's what I'm saying. Every jury member is different, but you have to know what jury members are sitting on that panel, because one group that's the reason they don't vote for you and that's their decision. But you could have some people who are like, I'm looking at the gameplay alone. I thought you play the best game, I'm going to vote for you. So it's just, every jury's different. It depends who's sitting there. And that's why Survivor's so brilliant, because you could play with one cast of people one day, do horrible, and play with a whole different group and win the season.
Casey, Mike White, the fact that he is able to navigate this game without much in the way of people like really, really coming after him, how was he able to do it? How was he able to go into a game as not a well-known person, but a person people knew, whether it was from Amazing Race or from his time in Hollywood, and able to make the end of a game where, people are consistently making crazy moves for a variety of reasons. And all of a sudden this man is sitting there, without much in the way of an opposition. How was he able to do it?
Well, I think it is because of his social game. I think it's really interesting this season alone. You have the parallels of both Mike and Nick, who were potential first boots on their respective tribes, and how they both flipped the entire game around for themselves. Mike is very interesting in that way too. I think once again, I think there's actually a lot of little parallels between Mike and Nick in that way, but I think he's just likable. He's easygoing, and especially, Mike might not be some sort of Hollywood A-lister, but he's an established man as a director, as an actor, as a writer. There are a sense of politics in that industry. He knows how to navigate. And I think that was his biggest strength. I don't think anyone really cared, because that, at least what we were shown in the edit, they knew School of Rock and The Amazing Race, but who were you in School of Rock? Do you really remember that when you're also on the island talking about it? But no, I think it's because of that. He is like
Ned Schneebly. But yeah, I know. I do agree. I feel like just the cast in general, and we're going to go more into the other folks surrounding this final three. Everyone had pretty good to great social games, and everyone strategically, it seemed like even someone that you wouldn't expect to pull off something, or would have would think to make a move, whether it's the right move or wrong move, it doesn't really matter. Everyone has their time to shine. Even if you look at someone like Jessica, who is the first vote out, that vote is fairly split because she does have people with her, and she does think it's going to be a blindside. And yeah, she does get blindsided, on the other end, but it shows that she had the mind for the game. The fact that Natalie does not go out first in the Goliath tribe when she should have, and was able to, and said, hey, yeah, it's going to be a blindside, but it's, it probably won't be me. I think that is a testament to her game. At the merge, when Gabby tries to orchestrate this thing to get rid of Christian, which I think was too early, and I hate how that. We're going to talk about how that episode was edited, but I think that she, at least, if that idol doesn't get played, it works. And then all of a sudden, people look at Gabby as and my big problem with the 30s, with the seasons in the 30s, are big moves for the sake of making big moves. When, even though, you don't have to make all the big moves to get to the end, I feel like a lot of people, specifically in Game Changers, Millennials versus Gen X, feel obligated to make big move after big move, and then their ass gets sent home. And this season, the big moves don't really impact, they don't immediately just get picked off after they make a big move. And I think it's because every move that happened this season, for the most part, made sense in the moment, and they didn't immediately become a target afterwards. Why do you guys think that this season specifically, we're able to have and we're going to talk about some of them in a bit, all of these big moves, and people not suffer the consequences, I guess, in the very next vote, if that makes sense?
I think with this cast, and I think this actually applies to a lot of uniqueness with this season, the cast is just, in the craziest way, perfectly balanced. They found a really incredibly well-balanced cast. People who aren't immediately threatened by those big moves. People who aren't immediately going to do a big move just to do a big move. People are going to take that opportunity to make a move that might not necessarily be the big move. It's just it's weird. I just think this cast is very unique. The cast is really what makes this season amazing, and I think that's the situation with this.
Lauren?
Two, they're thinking in a different direction. So some people automatically say, okay, this person led that last move, let's get them out right away after that, because they padded their stats here. Whereas this cast, they said, all right, that doesn't impact me as much. I probably can get them later because some of these happened a little bit earlier in the merge. So let it slow burn here. Let's do what I actually think is beneficial still for me on who I want to get out of the game. And then I'll focus on that person later. Because you see it in Millennials versus Gen X. Will Wall wants to do this big, huge production, whatever it may be, and then blows up in his face because I think he just wanted to make a move, like we were talking about. And I think that's the problem you run into with most seasons. However, I will say too, I always say, I would rather see someone at least try to make a move versus just say, I'm all right getting to the end and sitting there and maybe I get a vote or something. I want to see people at least try and do something. So I always appreciate that, whether it works or whether it doesn't. Rather you try versus not try just because you don't want to get voted out of the game.
No, and I do get that, and that is a rant that I've kind of gone on a lot over the last probably week. Is the fact that there are ways you can make subtle moves. The final two of the final three, Millennials versus Gen X, are making moves under the radar the entire time, and people don't clock it until David's gone, basically. But Adam and Hannah are doing a lot of stuff that season, but they are not out in the open, making it known that it's us doing this. So I do agree with you in the fact that, yes, you have to do something, but I feel like everyone just kind of gets in their heads, no, people need to see me do this because right. Natalie Anderson and Tony did it in 2 straight seasons. So it's like, okay, well, if they did it that way, that means we have to do it that way. When in reality, you really don't have to do that. You can play the game assertively and on the offense and still not be out in the open about it. And I think that Nick and a lot of the Davids this season are a testament to that because they are not outlandish. When they do make these moves, they smile, they shake it. Davey gets back to camp after they get rid of John. And he says, hey, I feel like we're in season 37. I feel like people shouldn't be pissed off. Big move respects big move. And we can kind of move on. And then Davey's not really targeted again for a bit after that. And I feel like in other situations that have happened in the past, where someone pulls off a big move and I won't say gloats about it, but you can tell that they have this thing about them walking around camp, and it's like, well, you're screwed. I also think, and this is the reason I even brought that up, is because both of you guys talked about the social game of everyone, and I think that is another thing where they can pull off a move and still socialize with people to make sure that they don't get targeted next. And I think that is a testament to the players that are on this season. Question. I remember someone asking you on Millennials versus Gen X that you liked Adams winning game over Nick Wilson's. Has your opinion changed or stayed the same? It stayed the same. I think that, I'm not super high on Adam or anything, but I would say that I still prefer, outside the game stuff aside, I still prefer Adams win over Nick's, whatever that means. I didn't want him, Ben, or Nick on Winners at War, but I'll talk about it in a few days. These other characters and these other tribals, I would feel like the first big tribal of the season is probably, as far as well known, is the one that Casey brought up earlier with Jacket Gate. I feel like that really set the pace for what tribals could be this season. And the fact that tribal is still probably the most iconic of all the tribals we get this season, once again, it's a testament to the cast. Jacket Gate. Lauren, Lyrsa.
Yes.
So I don't know if you've ever gotten stories from it, but just you as a spectator, what makes Jacket Gate tribal so iconic in a season of iconic tribals?
Yeah, Lyrsa and I we're friends. So every time I talk to her about the season, she goes, you really just had to be there. It's just because the reaction to it is this actually seriously happening? You know what I mean? She said, if you're sitting there and watching it from the whole outlook and just seeing her stand up, and she says, think about it, as a viewer, it looks pretty quick, but that's a slow approach, stand up and asking about the jacket and everything. So I feel like it's one of those things, even if you're there in person, it's even more brilliant than it is as a viewer. But as a viewer, I loved it. I think it was fitting for her character, Angelina's character. And then Natalie giving zero zero fucks about her and just keeps going. And I don't blame her. You just voted me out. You think I'm going to give you my jacket? Absolutely not. Keep on walking, Natalie. I love that moment. And that one is one people talk about and they really enjoy it themselves. But yeah, Lyrsa's brought that one up a couple times and she just says, if you're in the seat watching it go down, that's the best spot you could have.
Well, go ahead, Casey.
I was just going to say, with that whole scene, though, I mean, like I said, it is probably one of the most iconic scenes. It is the most iconic scene of the season. It is interesting on a second rewatch, seeing actually or at least truly understanding how actually upset Lyrsa and Nick are at the whole jacket thing. But it's just we were entering a territory, if I remember correctly, where it's these are some of the most brutal seasons that the players were kind of enduring at the time, literally just getting fucking hammered with cyclones to literally, I think it might have even been that episode or maybe the episode before they were removed from their camp.
Yeah, one of those two. It was definitely Swap, and I just can't remember exactly which one it was, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's just they got so mad at it, but it's just dude, she's fucking cold. Lyrsa, you have a windbreaker. Natalie has this fucking wool jacket, and then they have this cloth cardigan that Angelina has. So no, I don't blame Angelina. But yeah, it's once again, it's the first of the big over the top moments that are super transparent. Oh, I'm so upset. Please give me a hug, Natalie. But Natalie,
not about it.
Yeah, and Natalie,
you did it to the wrong person. That's the problem.
Yeah. And Natalie does say in her exit confessional, I don't know if Angelina has any part to do with that, so that's why I'm not giving. She didn't know, which actually Angelina didn't vote for Natalie. She voted for Lyrsa. But
she did it.
She knew, and it was transparent, which is the comedy of it all.
Yeah, and even Mike, almost, I won't say breaking character, but he's a real person in this moment. But him just kind of doing this, Nick, his shoulder. I think there are so many fun things that go in that last 15, 20 minutes of the episode with them going to tribal. Natalie basically trying to, coerce Nick into stealing Lyrsa's jacket. And it's are you going to do this or are you going to go home? Natalie feeling like she's so in control. I won't compare her to this person. I was going to make a Drew Christie comparison, but no, fuck Drew Christie.
No, we can't do that.
Where you just, you are so overly confident, hey, we have the numbers, this is just going to happen. So you might as well just do what I tell you if you want to stay. And all of a sudden she goes home. And I think that, like I said, it sets the bar for where tribals have to be this season. And although none of these tribals are as iconic as this one, they are very good to great. Mm-hmm. And I would say the next one that we get, even though it's basically a unanimous vote, is the Elizabeth one, only because of everything that goes into it, with Angelina basically saying, hey, no, you're going home, and Elizabeth blowing it up to everyone. And we go into that tribal, and Elizabeth's fighting for her life in there. Mm-hmm. And I do feel the only reason the David still stuck to the plan is because they knew that they had to do that. I want to talk about the John vote, though, because at that point, the Davids realized that they're kind of just being jerked around by Alec specifically. But a few of the other guys are oh, yeah, it's not don't worry. It's we're mixed up now. How are they able to pull this off? It's insane. In 37 seasons in, it's insane that they are able to pull off this move and it not get clocked or not get leaked out to the wrong person. Lauren?
I think with this one in particular, it's the calmness of the approach, in the sense of you have to be able to pinpoint the people you can 100% trust and keep it within a small enough circle where it's not getting leaked to everybody, where I need exactly this specific number to make this happen. And you have a lot of, I know we talk big characters on this season, but you still have the level-headed people there in the cast that can kind of control and make sure everyone's calm and no one's going out around freaking out and scrambling like crazy. And you have to have those people. If you don't have that, it blows up in 5 seconds.
Casey, the fact that they're able to play an idol, basically split the vote in a minority, um, even though the idol gets played on Angelina, which means that they knew that this was probably going to happen and are able to put the votes on John. And the way that John takes it is so great. And he just kind of sits there and he laughs. I think Nick screams, from the top rope. It's someone with an accent, so I'm assuming it was Nick. The fact that Christian still wants to be comptroller of Slamtown, there's a lot that goes into that tribal. For you, and if it's another tribal, just hold your horses. For you, is this your Angelina, Natalie aside? Is this your pick for best tribal of the season?
I don't know if I would actually say that. I don't know if I would actually say that. It is definitely the top 3 for this season. Which typically I'm not a fan of, when a bunch of idols get whipped out or a bunch of advantages. But yeah, it's definitely up there. And with John too, John, you're right. He's very graceful, and John's also just a very unique character. You first meet him and you think he's going to be this alpha meathead just based off his appearances, but just like a lot of people in the season, he actually shows that there's a lot of charm to him. But I mean, the idol play is really nice. But yeah, it's in my top 3. I actually don't know what would be my top tribal, and if it was the Jacket Gate situation, it is literally just for that moment. So
and that is, as we move on to the other tribals, I do want to talk about the fact that it seemed like this cast, and that once again, we're just keep praising this cast. It seems like they were playing the game, but it didn't seem like anyone was taking it overly personal most of the time. It seemed like they were out there. They knew what was going on. It's very similar to the 45 cast for me, where it's just like, okay, yeah, we're pulling off all these moves, but we're having fun while we're doing it. And we can laugh about some of the stuff. And yes, Angelina's annoying the shit out of me, but we can still, vibe with her. And yeah, we don't trust the Goliaths anymore, but we're still going to try to work with them, and we're still going to have fun. And the jury interactions, the jury facials this season are great. But then, okay, so then we go from that one, and we eventually get to the which one happens first? The Dan one or the
Dan happens next.
Oh, Dan happens. Okay, Dan happens next. Okay,
which is also up there because of the whole fucking idol nullifier.
I don't know.
Yep.
As someone who hates advantages, and as someone who hates Ghost Island, and someone that hates a lot of the seasons in the 30s because of the implementation of a lot of twists and advantages, David versus Goliath plays it so well with every advantage that is introduced this season and the way that they are played. Idol Nullifier is actually an advantage that I actually enjoy. We've had the idol long enough, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you add something, it adds a new layer to, okay, not only do I have to find out where the votes are going so I know where to play my idol, it now becomes, okay, now we know that this person has it. We know where the votes are going, and we're gonna and this is more of a broader 30s question. How do y'all feel about a lot of the advantages and a lot of the twists that are introduced in the 30s, specifically 34 on, but I know that there's also the extra vote is introduced pre 34, but 34 on we get a lot. We get mandatory fire making in 35. We get 2 tribe swaps in 34 that we see again in 36. We start getting 20-person all newbie casts, and we get a lot of these new advantages. What are y'all's thoughts on a lot of the changes that Survivor is going through in these mid to late 30s?
I've said it a million times, not a huge fan of idols and advantages. I think a little bit of it is necessary. Might be a hot take here, but I actually like the Final Four fire making. They always say fire represents your life. Fire is one of the most instrumental things to literal survivor, or to literal surviving. And how the fuck do you go on Survivor and not know how to make fire, or spend 38 days on a goddamn island and you don't know how to make fire, you have no one to blame but yourself. That is kind of what I also like about the Final Four fire making twist, is that you can't let a threat get to the Final Four, because then at the Final Four, I love the ability to earn your way into FTC, which means that all of those big moves, all of those strategic threats, they have to be taken out sooner. You have to pull out your bag of tricks and start doing crazy things. So at least in regards to the fire making twist, I actually like it. And the idol nullifier, I think, is beautiful. It's even more reason why you need to shut the fuck up and not tell everyone you have an idol. Don't do it.
All right, let's talk about fire making first, because I have opinions on it. So I don't want it every season. Switch it up. Do not make it predictable that you know it's always going to be at the Final Four. Make people guess. Make them know, okay, we're going to this challenge. I'm not guaranteed to make fire. My ass better win immunity or I'm probably going to go home. So I just think mix it up for me. I want to see something different. I'm fine with it there some seasons, but don't let it be something that people factor in and know 100%. Okay, I can make fire and still get to the end. Sometimes you're going to have to rely on your social and strategic abilities to get through the Final Four vote. So I'm fine with it there. I just don't need it every season. Idol nullifier, though, that's the best thing that they could have brought in, because, like you said, Casey, stop talking about when you have an idol. The best time to bring it up is if you're making a pinpoint move with an ally saying, no, we can make this work. If you're in the minority and you have to flip the script, that's a good point to bring it up. If someone didn't tell me about an idol and they told me to bring me into a move or something, I'm fine with that, because then I'm just saying, it's not that you didn't trust me. You were waiting to trust me for the right moment. Because if you didn't trust me at all, you never would have said anything for that move to happen. So I just think I'm okay with some advantages. I don't like it to dictate a season. I struggle with that completely, which is maybe why I struggle a lot with the new era. Although this last season, they all blundered the idols. So, I mean, the idols didn't really come into factor. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I was here for it. So yeah. I go back and forth with it, but I'm very much in Casey's corner. Less advantages, less idols, because go back to why everyone loves the old school so much is because these people were just dropped off somewhere, have to rely on their social, strategic, physical abilities to get to the end of the game. And that will always be Survivor to me. This is still Survivor, but it's just a rebranded Survivor.
Yes.
Which also, another thing too is, I don't think you said it, but correct me if I'm wrong, was this the first season where they switched the way that the jury acts?
No, that's Game Changers.
Yeah, Game Changers.
Okay. It's been a while since this is actually the first season I have rewatched since Survivor came back on with 41. I used to rewatch seasons all the time, but my brain has not been with it for Survivor, at least rewatching seasons that I've seen a million times. So yeah, this is the first one that I've rewatched, but I was thinking to myself, wait, was this the first season? But no, yeah, so I mean, that's
another twist that I enjoyed when they first introduced it, and I'm glad that it looks like after 45 or during 46, it looked like they were kind of going back to just having people ask individual things, but still sitting down, so it still looks like it's open to everyone. They mean to cut you off, but just,
yeah. Which I'm back and forth with that sort of introduction of twist, because I think with Survivor, we're talking about, Mike leaning back and not really fighting. But like sometimes having that sort of open forum format allows for people to pull out information or help people that just naturally aren't really well spoken. And I think we even saw that, even though it didn't amount to anything, a couple seasons ago with Carolyn, you had people that are like, well, Carolyn, tell us about this moment to pull out knowledge. So there's pros and cons to it, but I don't know. just the individual powers played is where I take issue. But at least with David versus Goliath, if I'm not mistaken, I think literally like all the idols and advantages were played literally in back-to-back like 2 episodes. Right?
I think Nick plays one for Davey at one point. I don't think it's successful, but that's during the Christian boot, I believe. I think that might be it. And I know I just finished it, but like everything's starting to get jumbled in my head.
They all come out sooner rather than later, which I think does help the season. Because my biggest issue, I think, with advantages in particular is when you get down to final 6, final 5, and then it still plays a role. I would be fine if final 8's even the cut for the idols and advantages. I would be okay with that. You can have it in the pre-merge, no worries. And then once you get to final 8, that should be the nitty-gritty, the game players. How are people navigating the game without relying on that to get them to the end of the game? Even though it is a factor, but I just want them to change something up about the style, the format that they do. 50, for example. People want this. We're never going to get it. Bring it back all the way old school, no idols, no advantages, and see how it goes. Just dump them out there and see what they can do. It's not going to happen. But just the impact alone that it does and how it can factor into an entire season and rebrand that season. Whereas if you eliminated that, you might see people rise up with the strategic, the social game, and they couldn't do that before because they got, I'm not saying robbed. Robbed's not the correct word, but they just got eliminated just because someone had freaking medallion in the back pocket.
Yeah, and instead we're probably just going to get fire tokens again in 50. So
actually, I was excited for the implementation of a currency system. I think that's
it. Nope, we're not doing this. We're not doing this.
No,
go ahead. Go on your.
I will say, I thought that's what the new era was building up to. I thought it would be very interesting to have a sort of currency system. You want to talk about a microcosm of society, add in a little bit of capitalism. But no, I mean, I think there's a level of balance that needs to be found with that too. But going back to the fire making thing, Lauren, you had said switching it up, you don't want it to always be this predictable thing. I think that there are certain things within Survivor that do need to be predictable, that need to be reliable aspects of the game. One of which is if you win immunity, it will never be taken away from you. That's something that should be established. I think, there was a point that I'm building to, and I lost my train of thought in the middle of it.
Got it, buddy. You got it.
But, oh, geez. Yeah. Okay, Mary. But anyway, fuck, I forget what I was going to say. I'll be back in a moment with it. Hold on.
Well, and we're gonna move to the episode that I said earlier that I hated the way that it was edited, because the Family Visit episode is edited to make you, it's edited to make you think that the reason Gabby wants Christian gone is because she's jealous. And I am convinced they did that on purpose, because anyone with a brain, anyone that watches the show enough knows that is not the case. Anyone that watches the season knows that's not the case, but it seems like they're very much trying to hit it home. Oh yeah, Gabby's jealous about this, so we got to do this. And it's not true. I think that Gabby just felt like she had to make a big move and vote out someone that probably would win at the end. The problem was she tried to do it too early, especially when Christian has shown to be the person that is there for her 100%. They just pulled off this move against Carl, I believe, in the previous episode together. And all of a sudden, okay, I want Christian gone. Did y'all get that vibe? Like, did you guys get that vibe from the edit that they were trying to nail that home, that, oh, she's jealous? Or am I just crazy thinking Survivors is stupid sometimes and wants us to get invested in stuff that actually doesn't exist?
I'll make mine short so Lauren can speak, because I also want to say the reliability statement that I was just talking about earlier had to do with idols. Don't introduce a million idols. You said set amount, and once they're played, then you could bring one more into it. That's what I was getting to with the reliability stuff. You need to know that there's going to be probably one for each pre-merge.
Yep.
Play, maybe one for merge, and once those are gone, then you introduce one more.
If someone still has one left, Like,
Yes.
that's it. Like, you're not introducing something else. I'm right there.
Yeah.
But Casey, you and I have always had the same mindset with everything, pretty much. We're pretty much on the same page aside from the fire making, but everything else we kind of,
Yeah. As for the Gabby statement, I think I did on my first watch think the same thing, that if it wasn't the reason, there were these hinted undertones of the episode. I still think so, because I think one of the storylines that they build to is the closeness of Gabby and Christian's relationship. Literally going back to the
they were playing in the sand. What?
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like the
Do you
that
wanna
second.
play
I
with
think
me?
that's the second episode, right?
It is. Do
Yeah,
you
it's
want to play with
early.
me?
Yep, it's
Yeah.
early.
Yeah, but like I think it was just like, we can build this storyline. But it is very dangerous. It's a dangerous thing to do. If that's literally what they're doing, it's irresponsible.
Lauren.
Yes. So I'll touch on my point. Can people not be friends with each other anymore? It's just like, here's the thing. There's no way they don't have a conversation out there amongst each other that he is with somebody. You know what I mean? You know that the amount of time they spend together, you can't tell me that this comes up and all of a sudden she's in shock that this man has a girlfriend. There's no way. So I don't like how it was edited. I felt bad for her in the moment, because she can't have a friend. I have really close guy friends. Doesn't mean I'm with that guy. You know what I mean? And they're in a relationship. I don't see an issue with it. And you also look at it too. You're relying on people out there. You have to get close to people out there. It's just the way Survivor is. There's a bond. You can have that emotional bond and that connection with somebody, but it's not anything outside of that with where a full-blown relationship is. You have to find the people you connect with that are your core, because if you don't have that, you're probably getting voted out. And they're playing in the sand. It's a joke. They're just that to me looked like a joke, a little playful.
It was, yeah.
That's what I mean. It's a playful, fun moment that you're trying to make a romantic piece out of it, and that's not what it is. So yeah, I'm right there where I say people can have friends that are,
Yeah. No, I get it, and I do agree with you, Casey. It is dangerous to portray it like that when it's not like that. And Lauren bringing up the fact that they had to have talked about the fact they had a girlfriend, so it shouldn't look like Gabby's so shocked and upset about it. And I think that's not how it actually went down. They just wanted us to feel that way. But anyway, she tries to blindside Christian because he is a threat, and it doesn't work. And, Carl's reaction on the jury is very similar to Joe's reaction in HHH. Whenever Ben would pull something off, it's like, yeah, Christian, the only difference is in this season, they could actually get rid of Christian the next episode, in fact. So Christian goes home, and we get to the end game. And I feel like if there is a lull in the season, if you want to even call it that, it is sort of the end game, final 6, final 7. But there's because the cast is so good, where it is a lull, you still are invested in it. For me, my first time watching it was like, okay, I actually have no idea who's going to win this. I know who I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for Davey. I think Mike White might win it. Everyone keeps telling me that Alice might be her. Nick has been on most of the votes. It could Kara's, fun.
I was about to go there. This is the first time we have mentioned her name on this podcast, because I was ready for you to say her name. So she's one of the people, she falls in the category where I think if she's on a different season, maybe she's one of the better characters, but she just was swamped with people that overshadowed her in this one, unfortunately for her, because I don't think she was a bad player by any means. It's just she didn't have enough of the storyline to get behind her where she got more of an edit.
She's always supplementary to other people. But I actually think in the pre-merge, she was consistently shown. But once again, she was supplementary.
Post-merge.
Yeah. Post-merge was a different story. Yeah. Post-merge is a different story.
The only real Kara content that we get is like, oh yeah, this whole thing with her and Dan. And it's just like, well, we know what's actually going on outside of the show, but I just never bought her and Dan in the show before I knew everything else. It was like, okay, yeah, it seems like it's sort of one-sided. It does seem like she's just flirting with him because she can get him to do whatever she wants. Dan sucks. I'm going to talk about Dan because Dan sucks. And someone brought it up in the comments, and I at the beginning of this, I said, we're still in the very corny themes era of the show. David versus Goliath, they don't try to. At least it didn't come off as overly just aggravating how much they brought it up, and they do bring it up a lot in the season. What I kept thinking about with this is I kept comparing it to Cook Islands. And what I mean by that is, if a white person wins Cook Islands, it doesn't look the best optics-wise just because of how the season is set up. David versus Goliath, you can't really have a Goliath win because that just totally shits on the story, which, so what? But if you're going to have a David versus Goliath season, you almost have to have a David win. And especially because everyone keeps saying, well, David beat Goliath. And, specifically Elizabeth and Nick in the first episode is like, well, David cut off Goliath's head and blah, blah, blah. And he does bring it up at Final Tribal. Yes, I know that's a little bit of a jump to say, oh, yeah, it's just like in Cook Islands. But I do feel like it's pretty similar where you can't have a Goliath win this season. And if a Goliath had won, so be it, whatever. What did we think as we're going to start wrapping up in here in a second? What do we think about the overall David versus Goliath theme? Do we feel like they were kind of just running out of ideas because this is pretty much the last time that we get this is the last time that we get a cast theme. Do you feel like they were just out of ideas? I was like, all right, let's do David versus Goliath and let's just hope a David wins.
Well, you want me to go or you want me to go or you got it?
Either.
The only thing I was going to say was they actually did comment on that when the season came out. Like Jeff and them, they made it. I'm 99% sure Jeff said the theme came from a couple of the people they casted that just totally, I forget what the story is, but something like that. And they were like, after we had met these people, we knew that we had to get them all on a season and do David versus Goliath. I'm 99% sure that was this season that they were referring to. Because there's not, the only other one was Winners at War, and that one's explains itself.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
Right.
Winners at War was a theme. Yeah, but Lauren?
Well, if we're talking theme here, I'm sorry, but we had heroes, healers, and hustlers before this, and that theme sucked. So,
I mean, yes, it's true.
We're talking running out of potential theme options. This one, in my opinion, should have came up before that one, because I'm sorry.
I mean, we had.
I get it. I get the three H's. You had to do the. I don't like that season, so I'm not.
No one does.
Go there. It's not on my list of recommends for people to watch that have not seen Survivor. But I like the concept. I think they just have the right cast for it. And if what you're saying, Casey, is true, I need to ask Lirsa about that because she might have some more information. I'll message you guys. If that is the case, then they finally figured it out where we found the theme, we have the people. This was a cast where we can tailor this theme around them. Because I don't even think, how sometimes on some seasons you could, theme-wise, you could probably have a person over here and then swap for that person. This one, I don't see it anywhere where you can swap really anybody that started on the starting tribes. Whereas other seasons, I think you definitely could. I'm really trying to think who you even swap.
Maybe B, because B is an MMA fighter.
Yeah, but B's whole backstory was about her being a victim of abuse.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You can't. There's no one here I can say that I could swap. Whereas other themes you definitely could, and this one's just not one of those.
I see. I didn't know Jeff on the record saying that Pat was the inspiration for this theme.
I can see that.
Yeah, potentially. I can walk across the street.
I can see that.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up, before I get to our final question, Casey, final thoughts on Survivor David vs. Goliath?
I think it's a fantastic season. I remember when it was first on TV and probably being about halfway through the season which is crazy to even have this thought halfway through the season being like, this is really good. And by the end of the season, I think David versus Goliath was in my top 5, if not my top 3. I have a little bit of COVID-ish brain when it comes to Survivor ever since the pandemic. I don't have the memory retention for Survivor like I used to when I was younger. I used to be able to like give you everything. So my brain being what it is now, it's 1000% still in the top 10, and it has to be in the top 5, but I couldn't tell you where its placement is. It's a fantastic season, very well balanced, as I said. You have characters, you have strategic players, you have your rational players, a little bit of emotional players. It's a little bit everything. It balances each other out. It's fucking fun to watch, and there are a number of blind sides, some bigger than others. And once again, most of the advantages are all done in like 2 episodes. So you can just kind of focus on the people. Like it's so good. It's lightning in a bottle. It's very rare.
It is very much lightning in a bottle. Yes. This is the best in the 30s. Yes, I would agree. That's jumping the gun on what I'm going to say. But Lauren, final thoughts on Dave versus Goliath.
It saved the 30s. Am I wrong? It completely saved the 30s era. I mean, aside from, we love Cambodia. A lot of people do. A lot of people want to see some of those people that hadn't played in a long time. Wrong, I think sometimes is underrated. But again, everything, I do like Millennials versus Gen X. But everything else, it does save the 30s, especially after coming from Game Changers, HVHVH, whatever, and then Ghost Island. You need this season, because without it, I just think people aren't fired up for another one, but then we get Edge of Extinction after that, so then they just go down a little bit more from there. But
Spoilers,
it's
I don't
good.
hate it.
I agree. I'm middle.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is too, when I speak to Lyrsa about this season, she always says, I love being on a season where people always say, it's so good, I rewatch it all the time, versus being on a season people say, it's terrible. And she says that. She said, even though I was not on the season as long as I wanted to be, people still remember me. You know what I'm saying? Like, people still know the confessionals, the sound bites, all this and that. And she's very appreciative of that. And so I think that's a cool moment for people that are on a cast such as this, is they say, at least my season was memorable. At least people know who I am still. They can rewatch it. It's fun. I love it.
For me, it's my favorite all newbie season. With the comment, this is the best of the 30s. For me, it is, Cambodia. For me, is number 3 on my list. Oh, okay. So I'm giving David vs. Goliath 4.75 out of 5. It is now second place on my list through 37 seasons. But after Cambodia, I've got Millennials vs. Gen X at 13. I've got Wrong at 19. Worlds of is 33. Ghost Island 34. HHH 30. We are at a period, and I know everyone always says, "Oh, it starts with 41." That's where the downward spiral starts, and it's like, no, that's not true. It starts in the 30s. Y'all just forgot everything pre-COVID. It started in the 30s. It really started with Worlds Apart, and then we get a couple of seasons that are either underappreciated or just really good in Cambodia and Dave vs. Goliath's case. But a lot of these seasons, like I said, the last 2 days have been so boring for me, and I hate it. I look forward to Edge of Extinction because I don't hate that season. It's pretty good. Most of the cast is fun. Island of the Idols is going to happen soon. And then I get to Winners at War, which is overrated, but still very good. 4.75. Final question. If you had to pick 1 or 2 people from this cast to be on season 50, who would it be and why? Casey, we'll start with you.
Oh, that's really difficult. I'm stuck actually between like 4 people.
Just pick 4 of them. Okay.
Oh, geez. Okay, so I'd say John, Gabby, Christian, and Angelina. I think Gabby and Christian you couldn't have on the same season. They're both endearing in very different ways, and they're both strategic in very different ways. John fits that sort of physical build, but he's not a meathead. He's actually a super likable guy. And then Angelina is a fucking character that I would hope has had the time to marinate on her previous season, and let's see an evolved game. So I'd be around those 4.
Okay. Lauren?
I'll pick one from the pre-merge, one from post-merge. I'm biased. I'm gonna say Lyrsa because I just think, and it's not even because I'm friends with her. It's even going back to my point of she was part of that group that then became the final 3. Mm-hmm. She was not playing poorly. It just wasn't in her favor. And then my second person I'm gonna say, I want to see Davy. I really want to see Davy get another chance here because I do think Davy, 1, delivered in confessionals, 2, has the social prowess, if you will, of he can speak and communicate with people and make people feel good with him. I think he does well on a return season versus I know we like Christian, and I do like Christian too, but I think Christian goes in, has a way bigger target on his back versus a Davy going back, where I think Davy can play that little, all right, I'm not the top dog here, but I'm going to become the top dog and maybe get myself to the end and give myself a chance to win. I think if Christian goes back, no shot Christian has a chance to win. I think if Davy goes back, Davy has a chance. I don't think anyone lets Christian get to the end.
No,
absolutely. It depends on who the rest of the cast is, though.
I mean, even then,
you're not wrong, but I'm just saying he can talk so well that I just think they're not going to let him get to the final 3 because he'll pull something out where they say, "Wow, like what? How can we beat this?" You know what I mean? Whereas Davy, I think, has the opportunity to play under the radar coming back because he wasn't the pinpoint character on the season. He was a character, but not like the pinpoint one.
I would say I compare, and I'm not talking about for obvious reasons. I would say it'd be very similar to Jeremy on Cambodia, where Jeremy, is a character on San Juan del Sur among characters, whether cartoony or not. As a character on San Juan del Sur, goes out early enough because he's a threat, but he never really establishes himself as the threat of the season. And it's the same thing with Davy, where Davy is a threat for most of it, but until towards the end, he's not looked at as the guy that we need to get rid of. And so I do feel like if he were to come back, he would be similar to Jeremy Collins in that situation. For me, it would be Davy. It would be Angelina. I feel like Angelina has to be a lock, right? Like she has to be.
Of course, she has to be.
Davy, Angelina, and I am going to say Christian because I know you said that, but they let Spencer get to the end of Cambodia, and he was actually he was doing stuff out there.
How did that go for him though?
Oh, he lost.
That's what I mean.
But he didn't. He wasn't targeted. He was targeted early, and they still voted out Shireen first. So I do feel like if you put Christian in a type of situation, yes, and this is all fantasy booking, we don't even know what's going to happen, but I wouldn't him come back. I feel like I wouldn't mind seeing most of this cast come back. We brought up Natalie, Lyrsa. We've talked about John. I feel like someone like Mike White. There are a lot of people here.
Give me Jeremy. I just want to see what would happen again. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
We definitely need Jessica back.
A good second chances contender. If you're talking about super early boot, I would put him on my list. Maybe would he get on?
You would have to put Natalie. It would have to be like a Philip Francesca thing, where you would have to bring Natalie back too.
That's what I'm saying. I think it would be brilliant. Look at Casey. Casey said, "I can't."
Casey,
that would be freaking crazy. Absolutely batshit insane. But
all right, so do you guys want to start shelling your stuffs? I know both of y'all have a fair few things going on. Casey?
Yeah, so I've got a lot going on right now. So assuming we're talking about, plugging our shit right now.
Yes, you're right.
I host both an online game and a live game. well, actually, I host a couple online games. My first is Prometheus. It is essentially was based around the like original season of Survivor. Both Lauren and Andrew actually played on season 1. So go check that out. The full season's out. Then we did a season 2 of it. That's fully out. Then we did a season 3 that's still in post-production. And then we just started airing our spin-off game, which is called Hysteria. It is a murder mystery game that has the structure of like Werewolf, Secret Hitler, The Traitors, but there's more of a story there. There are clues that are there too. So it's not based on nothing. There are things to go off of that's just more than body language. It is in a short format. Go check it out. And then this August, we're going to be live streaming / editing for our live game called Heart. So yeah, check that out. The page is Prometheus.webseries on YouTube.
And I'll leave the link in this. Lauren?
Yeah, you can find me on the Reality After Show with Johnny Fairplay, Matt Bischoff. I normally cover the challenge. We've just wrapped Challenge All-Stars. We'll be back for season 40 of the challenge. Super fun, really enjoy it. And yeah, definitely check us out. So that's all I got. I'm the challenge gal over there, you know?
Well, thank you all both so much for discussing probably the last great season we're gonna get before I'm done with this. Not to knock any other seasons, but like it's the last great season that we're gonna get before I'm done.
You mean not 43?
43 is not bad, but you know, whatever. Nick Wilson won this one, and it's still number 2 for me. So like, it's it's fine. No, thank you guys both so much. I really do appreciate it. You know, I know that y'all have your lives going on right now. I know that Lauren hasn't eaten dinner yet. I don't believe. But
Amber.
But hopefully I get to see you guys when I do the live stream for 46. If not, you know, thank you again. Thank you to everyone in the chat. Tomorrow is tomorrow's Edge of Extinction. So I can't wait to argue with people over Chris stuff. Spoilers. I like Chris. He's fine. But until then, we'll see you guys on the other side.